Hello and welcome back to another Stuff with Sophie J. Today we are painting as I tell you the story of the real-life Peggy Guggenheim, who inspired the creation of the main character of Peggy Battenberg in the book Dreamland. If you are interested in book-related content, I post new videos every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Alright, so what you're seeing me recreate today is a famous Pablo Picasso painting entitled Half-Length Portrait of a Man in a Striped Jersey, which is part of Peggy Guggenheim's private collection. So a little bit about the painting. It is a painting that was completed in 1939, which was right as World War II was starting. And Picasso said he didn't try to paint the war, but he suspected it would come out in his paintings of the time. So this picture originally is a very blue and gray tone, so I would say it is pretty telling that he was kind of depressed. Of course he would be. There is war on your doorstep, so that came out for sure. But my version, I didn't necessarily want to work with those colors because I'm gonna be honest, my gouache that I have is not great quality, so my black and white aren't the best, so I decided to change it to more of a pink and green tone. And the original portrait is done on a piece of paper with gouache painting. I decided to recycle my Amazon gift boxes from my many orders that I've made during quarantine, because I thought it would be a good base for this painting, because it is kind of muddy, if you notice, and the gouache is great for achieving that muddy look. So that's how I came about that. If you're not aware, gouache is kind of a mix between watercolor and acrylic painting. So you get the opaqueness of acrylic, but you can water it down like a watercolor. So that is pretty nice. So like I said in my previous video, I was a little let down after reading Dreamland, even though it was very good, after learning about who Peggy Guggenheim was and how she was the inspiration for Peggy Battenberg in that book, because she was an amazing person. Like, she did a lot, so, and influenced a lot, so I just wanted to bring some attention to her real life story. So Peggy was born on August 26, 1898, and she was born into the famous Guggenheim family, which earned their money from mining. So very rich people. She was the daughter of Benjamin Guggenheim and Florette Seligman, who the Seligmans were rich themselves as they earned a lot of their money from banking. So she comes from two very prominent Jewish families. She was the middle child, and she had two sisters, one older sister named Benita and one younger sister, Hazel. She was very close to her older sister, Benita, but Peggy did say she grew up pretty lonely as her mother didn't let them play with other children. She says her mother kept her children at arm's length, and her mom was kind of an eccentric. And it is worth noting that a history of mental illness ran through the women of the Seligman family, and it seems as though this may have been true of her sister Hazel, as later in life she shocked the New York social scene when she took her two young sons and dropped them from a roof, and which killed them both. She's very close to her father, but like his brothers, he was a bit of a philanderer and kept many mistresses. In one interview, she remembers being so bold as to ask during dinner if her father was going to rush off to meet his mistress. By the way, this was included in Dreamland because Peggy did the same to her father. And unfortunately, her dad met an untimely death on the Titanic. If you read the book Dreamland, Peggy's dad also died in a boat accident, but that was like a ferry accident, and this was like the Titanic. So something worth noting, because I guess this is recorded history. He was said to have dressed in his best to go down with the ship, as he noted many of the top-ranking crew members and footmen did the same. So he was dressed to the nines when he went down, so way to go out. Since her dad's investments weren't as great as that of her uncles, she inherited much less of the Guggenheim fortune than that of her cousins. Not to say she was struggling, but it kind of made her drawn to the Bohemian lifestyle, as she wasn't living as extravagantly as, say, some of her cousins. In fact, it seemed like extravagance like that was kind of a turnoff for her. She took up work as a shop girl for a time at a local Bohemian bookshop called the Sunwise Turn. This is very similar to the Peggy in Dreamland. She did the same thing. It was a different bookshop, but same idea. And here she started to meet many artists and writers in the Bohemian scene. People like artist Marcel Duchamp, who would later become a collaborator of hers. This led her to leave New York for Paris to immerse herself more into the Bohemian scene. Here she met her first husband, Lawrence Vail, who was a writer and sculptor, and at one time dubbed the King of Bohemia. They had 2 children, a son, Sinbad, and a daughter, Peggy. Lawrence was said to be incredibly abusive and seemingly would regularly beat Peggy. They eventually separated in 1928. While she was living in Paris, she was buying paintings from her artist friends every day. This is how she started her collection. In 1938, she began displaying them within her gallery of modern art that she had opened in London. Her collection mainly focused in abstract and surrealist art. She received a lot of help and advice for her gallery from her friend Marcel Duchamp. In an interview, she said she pretty much would do whatever he said when it came to running the gallery because she put so much trust into him. In 1939, with the threat of war on their doorsteps, many modern artists were selling their art to Peggy so she would save them. They feared what the Nazis would do if they were to get a hold of them. See, at this point, the whole Nazi regime, they were going around and collecting paintings or types of like modern art and putting them up in museum, of basically saying this art is wrong, it's disgusting, look, and putting it on display, and they would later destroy it. 3 days before the Nazis invaded Paris, she fled the city to the south of France along with her family and extensive collection. Mind you, this was a woman from a prominent Jewish American family. If she was caught doing what she did, she could have ended up in an internment camp herself. From there, Peggy fled to New York City and she settled down there for a time. And there she displayed her collection at a gallery she started called The Art of This Century. By the way, she was kind of a competitor with her own uncle, Solomon Guggenheim, as he had a museum that also had an extensive modern art collection. Despite the familial tie, they never collaborated, and she suspects her uncle's assistant, who ran the museum, disliked her. In this time, she married her second husband, artist Max Ernst. And something I haven't mentioned about Peggy is she had many lovers. She and her husbands were constantly cheating on each other. In an interview later in her life, she did say that she thinks she was constantly wanting to feel loved because she felt a bit insecure and lonely. In this interview, she also claimed to have slept with 1,000 men. So good for Peggy. Once the war had ended, she ended her marriage with Max Ernst, and then she moved to Venice and turned her home into a museum, which was aptly titled the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. Her collection includes works by Duchamp, Dali, Miro, Picasso, Kandinsky, Pollock, Ernst, among many others. The museum does also include paintings by Peggy's daughter Peggy, who was an artist in her own right, though she died tragically in 1967 as a result of a drug overdose. Peggy shared this home with her many dogs and lived there till her death on December 23, 1979. Her ashes are interred in the garden there along with her dogs. The museum is still in operation and is finally reopening on February 11th after closures caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Needless to say, Peggy Guggenheim was a badass in her own right. Anyways, I definitely recommend the documentary on her life called Peggy Guggenheim, Art Addict. It's basically an interview that was lost for many years with her, and you could hear about her in her own words as well as some commentary from friends of hers. Also, check out the book Dreamland by Nancy Billier, which just came out this last January 2021. I read it and talked about it in my January wrap-up. It's an excellent book. Peggy in that book isn't as badass as the Peggy of real life, but it's still really cool. Anyways, if you like this video, remember to give that a thumbs up down below. If you didn't, please let me know as well. I need some feedback, so it helps if you just say why. And if you have any commentary about what you liked about this video, please leave it in the comments below. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And if you really like this content and you already did subscribe, why not hit that notification bell to get notified every time I make a new video. Anyways, thanks a lot guys, bye!